ज्ञानदीपेन
Surata Vishwato Mukam. In this way, King Malayadwaja attained perfect knowledge because in his pure state he was directly instructed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By means of such enlightening transcendental knowledge, he could understand everything from all angles of vision. So when he became completely purified, the Super Soul instructed him what to do. Okay? So it's not like, people sometimes say, I heard the Lord speaking to me. That's not how it is. This is what it is, right? They have done so much service and then the Lord directly instructed, just like Arjuna was directly instructed by. So here, the Super Soul, when he came to that platform, the Lord taught him. Right? So therefore Prabhupada uses the word Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam Yena Mam Upayanti. Right? So that to give us the understanding that when we perfect it properly, the Super Soul or Krishna in our heart will tell us what to do. Similarly, in the first canto, you remember Narad Muni, he was successful for a while, for a moment, and the Lord revealed to him. He said, you need to continue until the end of your life to become fully perfected. Alright? So the Lord is the Super Soul in all living entities' heart. Particularly for devotees, he is our Chaitya Guru. He is the spiritual master in our heart. And then our spiritual master, external, is a manifestation of that Chaitya Guru. So we listen to the Chaitya Guru, external manifestation, spiritual master properly. When we are successful, the Lord in the heart will reveal himself. Like that. Okay? Text 42.
So, the allegorical story is still going on.
Huh?
Yeah.
Pastor is going on. It's going to go for a while.
It's real now.
Yeah. Next 42. Param Pare Brahmani Chatmanam Param Brahma Tatatmani Vikshmano Vihayeksham Asma Upararamaha King Malayadwaja could thus observe that the Super Soul was sitting by his side. There you go. And that he, as the individual soul, was sitting by the side of the Super Soul. Since both were together, there was no need for separate interests. Thus he ceased from such activities. So therefore he didn't want to think anymore, he just wants to serve, whatever the desire of the Lord is. So that is what it means by their interest became one. That means it became spiritual. Okay? People twist and turn this kind of words, but that's not what it means. So he wants to serve. So whatever the Lord wants, he wants to do. Then he can see everything as belonging to the Lord, or everything is spiritual. The material energy is also the energy of the Lord. So he sees everything in a spiritual vision. Remember, both the potence and the potency are the same. Right? The energy and the energetic. Okay? It's not separated. Okay? Text 43. Yes. Which you all have to remember.
Yes.
Patim Parama Dharma Gyam Vaidarbhi Malayadvajam Vimna Paryachara Ditva Bhogansa Pati Devata. The daughter of King Vidarbha accepted her husband all in all as the supreme. She gave up all sensual enjoyment and in complete renunciation followed the principles of her husband who was so advanced. Thus she remained engaged in his service. Okay? So he became her spiritual master. And so she accepted him and therefore she was guided by Malayadwaja how to practice devotional service by serving him. Okay? So in that sense, Prabhupada says she is very fortunate. Therefore, the husbands have a big burden to become good devotees, so they can guide the wife and the children nicely. Otherwise, then the wife has to take care of the husband if he is not qualified. That becomes a problem because he'll think he knows better like that. All kinds of problems. Text 44. Chiravasa pratakshama
Chiravasa pratakshama
Venibhuta shiroruha
Venibhuta shiroruha
Bhava upapatim shanta
Bhava upapatim shanta
Shikha shantam ivanalam
Shikha shantam vanalam.
The daughter of King Vidarbha wore old garments and she was lean and thin because of her vows of austerity. Since she did not arrange her hair, it became entangled and twisted in locks. Although she remained always near her husband, she was as silent and unagitated as the flame of an undisturbed fire. So generally in Vanaprastha stage, this is how you dress. You don't put on a fancy sari and stuff like that. No more. All this are done. Now it's time for trying to give up the material body. Preparation for giving up of the material body. So she didn't even bother combing her hair. What for? No need to. Remember in the previous verses, Prabhupada said the wife must dress nicely and all, so that when the husband comes, he feels refreshed just looking at a nice wife. Right? Remember? So now it's a different thing. Now in a Vanaprastha stage, no more, no need. There's no question of sex life. So that's the main idea here. Okay. All she is doing is serving her husband. And simply by serving her husband, she will get to go back to Godhead. So the whole idea about how a Vanaprastha couple should act is in this particular purport. And at the end, Prabhupada says, when they finish with all the sexual levels, sense gratification, but they only see each other as a devotee who are trying to go back to Godhead, that stage is Paramahamsa stage, because they have become very advanced. So they are liberated from their bodily consciousness. They are only thinking of pleasing Krishna. So similarly, if the disciple remains steady in the service of spiritual master, he need no longer fear falling down into the clutches of Maya. That's what protects the disciple, serving the instruction of the spiritual master. Very important. Text 45. Ajanati priyatamam
Ajanati priyatamam
Yado paratam manganam
Yado paratam manganam
Sustirasanam asadyam
Sustirasanam asadyam
Yata purvam upachara.
Yata purvam upachara.
The daughter of King Vidarbha continued as usual to serve her husband, who was seated in a steady posture, until she could ascertain that he had passed away from the body. So she was just serving him still, and he was in trance. Okay, so she didn't stop and just wait until he died and then she go away. No, she was doing her service. Text 46. Yadanu paladetangra
Yadano palaletangra
Usmanam patyur archati
Usmanam pratyurachati
Asitsam vikna ridaya
Asitsam vignadaya
Yutabrasta mrige yada.
Yutabrashta mrigi yatha.
While she was serving her husband by massaging his legs, she could feel that his feet were no longer warm and could thus understand that he had already passed from the body. She felt great anxiety upon being left alone. Bereft of her husband's company, she felt exactly as the deer feels upon being separated from its mate. So now she realized her husband is dead and she started to feel separation. So she's crying. Text 47. Atmanam sochati dinam
Atmanam sochati dinam
Abandhum viklavasrudi
Abandham viklavashrudi
Stanavasicya vipine
Stanavasicya vipine
Susparam prarurodosa.
Suswaram prarudosa.
Being now alone and a widow in that forest, the daughter of Vidarbha began to lament, incessantly shedding tears which soaked the breast and crying very loudly. So similarly, Prabhupada says the disciple, when the Guru passes, should also be crying like that because of separation, and because the spiritual master has given them something that no one in the whole world can give, connecting you to the Supreme Personality of God. So as long as the disciple follows strictly the instructions of the spiritual master, he is always connected with the spiritual master. Physically the Vapu is not there, but through Vani he is always there. Okay? So in that way, the disciple is always with the spiritual master, never alone. Okay? Through simply executing the instructions. Text 48. Uttisthatotista rajarishe
Uttishtottishta rajarishe
Imamudadi mekalam
Imamudadi mekalam
Dasyubhya shatra bandhubhyo
Dasyubhya kshatra bandhubhyo
Divyatim patum arhasi
Divyatim patum arhasi.
O best of kings, please get up. Get up. Just see this world surrounded by water and invested with rogues and so-called kings. This world is very much afraid, and it is your duty to protect her. So now she is lamenting, so she is asking her husband to get up. You're the king, you should be protecting. So similarly, when the Acharya leaves sometime, there is some problem in society also. Nobody will follow the instructions anymore. Right? When the Acharya is there, everyone will listen. And the Acharya go only, like they say, right? When the cat is away, the mouse comes out to play. So it is like that, all the execution of religious principles are executed nicely. When there's someone they can look forward to or look up to. When they are gone, there's always a problem. So Prabhupada says when the Acharya disappears, rogues and non-devotees take advantage. And they introduce unauthorized principles. Right? So similarly, even devotees, if they are not practicing properly, they also will twist and turn the philosophy. So the Acharyas, when they are here, like when Prabhupada came, he came on the order of Krishna. He came to teach the principles of executing the Harinam Sankirtan in this age. Because after Mahaprabhu left, still there was chaos. Even though all the Acharyas, powerful Acharyas came, it was up to Prabhupada to establish the standard throughout the world. He had to minimize from the 500 years ago the standard. He had to adjust for this, us, right? From Lakhapati to 16 Pati,
64
16 Rampati,
Hajarapati.
4 times.
So that's the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, right? And so that we can take our, and you can see we are trying. We are not great, but we are trying at least. So that is Prabhupada's greatness. The fact that fallen people like us are still trying to do something, isn't it? So that's the potency of Srila Prabhupada. So in the last paragraph, Prabhupada says, the Acharya is the authorized representative of the Supreme Lord. He establishes these principles, but when he disappears, things once again become disordered. And the perfect disciples of Acharya try to relieve the situation by sincerely following the instructions of spiritual master. So we must follow sincerely. Otherwise it will hurt Srila Prabhupada. He will be hurt. He will feel so much pain. At the present moment, practically the entire world is afraid of rogues and non-devotees. Therefore, this Krishna consciousness movement is started to save the world from irreligious principles. Everyone should cooperate with this movement in order to bring about actual peace and happiness in the world. Because we have the knowledge and the means to help people. Nobody can help or want to help. Text 49. Evam vilapanti bala
Evam vilapanti bala
Vinenu gatapatim
Vinenu gatapatim
Patita padayo bhartu
Patita padayo bhartu
Rati astuni avartaya.
Rati ashuni avartaya.
The most obedient wife thus fell down at the feet of her dead husband and began to cry pitifully in that solitary forest. Thus the tears rolled down from her eyes. Text 50. Chittim darumayim chitva
Chitindarumayim chitva
tasyam patyu kalevaram
tasyam patyu kalevaram
adipya chanu marane
vilapanti
vilapanti
manodade.
She then prepared a blazing fire with firewood and placed the dead body of her husband upon it. When this was finished, she lamented severely and prepared herself to perish in the fire with her husband. Okay, so she made the fire and then she put her husband's body there. He's dead, he's skinny, so it's easy to put his body. So we are wondering how she can carry. So that's how it is done. And then she was going to enter and into the fire. It is called Saha Marana. Okay?
Same as
Sahagamanam. Sahagamanam.
You can speak louder.
Sahagamanam.
Sahagamanam. Yeah, same thing. Yeah. So then again, remember I was saying about the British. This is where I read. So in India it was there even to the day of British occupation, and they stopped it. Okay, because they found that this was not the right thing. The British government stopped this practice, considering it inhuman. Then at the end of the paragraph, Prabhupada says, even as late as 1936, we saw a devoted wife voluntarily enter the fire of her husband. So nowadays, nobody will dare. Nowadays, if you tell them they go, they'll push you and go. So it won't happen. So in the next paragraph, Prabhupada says, this indicates that a devotee's wife must be prepared to act in such a way. Similarly, a devoted disciple of the spiritual master would rather die with the spiritual master than fail to execute the spiritual master's mission. As the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes down upon this earth to re-establish principles of religion, so his representative, the spiritual master, also comes to re-establish religious principles. It is the duty of disciples to take charge of the mission of the spiritual master and execute it properly. So we all are carrying the mission of Srila Prabhupada. So we have to be serious about it. Text 51. Tatra purvatara kaschit Sakha Brahmana Atmavan Santvayan Valguna Samna Tamaha Rudatim Prabhu. At a king, one Brahmana who was an old friend of King Puranjana came to that place and began to pacify the queen with sweet words. Now this Brahmana is actually the Paramatma. Okay? So the Lord in the heart is the best friend. So he has come to help the living entity to go home back to Godhead. So he gives good advice. But when the devotee is not doing devotional service, he wants to enjoy sense gratification. So he cannot listen to good advice. But when they are very serious, then the Lord will come to give directly or send a spiritual master to guide them. Okay? So technically, Prabhupada says this following in the instruction of spiritual master's mission is called Vani Seva. Okay? So one should serve the spiritual master's instruction as in Vyavasayatmika Buddhi, aka Kurunanda. One pointer. By doing that, he will see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in the middle paragraph, Prabhupada writes, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma, appeared before the Queen as a Brahmana, but why didn't he appear in his original form as Sri Krishna? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur remarks that unless one is very highly elevated in loving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot see him as he is. So, qualification is very important. Okay. Nonetheless, if one sticks to the principles enunciated by the spiritual master, somehow or other he is in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since the Lord is in the heart, he can advise a sincere disciple from within. Yeah, Dadani Buddhi Yoga. He will give the intelligence how to come. He may not reveal himself, but he can give instructions. So in the final paragraph, Prabhupada says, in conclusion, if a disciple is very serious to execute the mission of spiritual master, he immediately associates with the Supreme Personality Godhead by Vani or Vapu. This is the only secret of success in seeing the Supreme Personality in God. Instead of being eager to see the Lord in some bush of Vrindavan, while at the same time engaging in sense gratification, if one instead sticks to the principle of following the words of the spiritual master, you will see the Supreme Lord without difficulty. So people go to Vrindavan, but instead of doing devotional practice, they are doing some nonsense. And then they say they will see Krishna in some of the bushes around Vrindavan. So Prabhupada is like a bit sarcastic there. Text 52. Brahmana vacha Katum kashyasi kovayam
Katvam kasyasi kovayam
Sayano yasya sochasi Janasi kim sakayam mam Vinagre vichachartaha. The Brahmana inquired as follows: Who are you? Whose wife or daughter are you? Who's the man lying here? It appears you are lamenting for this dead body. Don't you recognize me? I'm your eternal friend. You may remember that many times in the past you have consulted me. Paramatma. You think, oh Lord, help me. Lord in the heart, please do this. Alright, so in the second paragraph, Prabhupada says, when the Brahmana asked the woman who the man lying on the floor was, she answered that he was her spiritual master, and that she was perplexed about what to do in his absence. At such a time, the Super Soul immediately appears, provided the devotee is purified in heart by following the directions of the spiritual master. A sincere devotee who follows the instructions of the spiritual master certainly gets direct instructions from his heart from the Super Soul. Thus, a sincere devotee is always helped directly or indirectly by the spiritual master and the Super Soul. So it's also confirmed in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Guru Krishna Prasadipaya Bhakti Latavish. Sometimes the Lord helps, sometimes the spiritual master. But both are helping to bring them to Krishna consciousness. Text 53. Api smarasi chatmanam Vijnata sakam sake Vamam padam manvichan Somabhogarato gataha. The Brahmana continued, my dear friend, even though you cannot immediately recognize me, can't you remember that in the past you had a very intimate friend? Unfortunately, you gave up my company and accepted a position as enjoyer of this material. So this is another confirmation, right? He's saying you rejected me and you came to enjoy. So Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada quotes that Ichcha dvesh samate na. That's how he gets duality, desire and hate. And therefore he became envious of Krishna. He wanted to enjoy separate from Krishna. So Prabhupada says this is the explanation of how the living entity falls down into this material world. In the spiritual world there is no duality, meaning there is no hatred. But once he desires against Krishna, means he hates that Krishna is enjoying more than he is. So, and then later on, as mentioned in the Varaha Purana, he expands himself into Vishnu Tattva, the Samsa expansions, and in his marginal potency, the Vibhinamsa or the living entity. So this is another place where he says he expands into both the Jivas and the Vishnu Tattva. Okay? So they are innumerable all over this world. So in the Prema Vivarta, this is an important verse, you all should memorize this. Krishna Bahirmukha Hana Bhoga Vanchakari Nikatastha Mayatare Japatiyadare. The natural position of the living entity is to serve the Lord in a transcendental loving attitude. When the living entity wants to become Krishna himself or imitate Krishna, he falls down into the material world. Since Krishna is the Supreme Father, his affection for the living entity is eternal. when the living entity falls down into the material world, the Supreme Lord, through his Swangsha expansion, Paramatma, keeps company with the living entity. In this way, the living entity may someday return home back to Godhead. So he's always waiting for the living entity to come back. So it's following. So this is the best friend. Suridam Sarvabhuta. So in the last paragraph, Prabhupada says, the Supreme Lord is the supreme friend of everyone. However, no one can take advantage of the Supreme Friend's instructions while making his own plans to become happy and entangling himself in the modes of material nature. So therefore, Prabhupada's point is, stop all your plans, just listen to Krishna's plan. Just like Arjuna, Krishna says, you just be my instrument, nimittam matram. Right? Become my instrument. Don't think of all this thing. Do what I'm telling you now. Everything will be successful. That's 54. Hangsavaham cha tvam charya
Hamsavaham cha tvam charya
Sakayo manasayanau
Sakayo manasayanau
Abhutamantara vauka
Abhutamantara
Sahasra parivatsaran.
Sahasra parivatsaran.
My dear gentle friend, both you and I are exactly like two swans. We live together in the same heart, which is just like the Manasa lake. Although we have been living together for many thousands of years, we are still far away from our original home. So swans means pure. That's what it is. Very pure entity, spiritual entity. So but one of them has forgotten, and so he is so far away from his home. Vaikuntha, Goloka. So the other friend has come to accompany him back. And that is when we are covered by our enjoying tendency in the material nature, and we do not see that. That's 55. Satum vihaya mam bandho
Sahabam vihaya mam bandho
gato brahmyamati mahim
Gato brahmyamati mahim
charan padam adrakshi
Charan padam adrakshi
Kayachin nirmitam striya
Kayachin nirmitam striya.
My dear friend, you are now my very same friend. Since you left me, you have become more and more materialistic and not seeing me. You have been traveling in different forms throughout this material world, which was created by some woman. Now when he says woman, it means his
Mother.
Prakriti, material energy. Okay? So that's, and then Prabhupada talks about how the material energies come about and supplied by the Mahatattva and so on. So in the next paragraph, Prabhupada says that the Brahman, the Brahmadikona, Bhagavan Jiva. So when he gets the mercy of Krishna, he becomes fortunate, Bhagavan, Bhaga. So he becomes Bhagavan. Bhagavan is one who knows Bhagavan, like that. So the living entity wanders in so many lives, but because of the mercy of the Lord, we sometimes get the association of devotees. So we become Bhagavan. But we become really Bhagavan when we take that instruction and practice devotional service, and then the spiritual master brings us back to Krishna. Okay? So that is the most important thing to understand. That's why he says, Guru Krishna Prasad, their mercy, it's actually their mercy. Otherwise we are no one, we are just fools. So Prabhupada then makes a very amazing statement, and this is a fact. He says, actually it is Krishna who personally advises all living entities to return home, back to Godhead. He comes directly in the heart, or he comes as a spiritual master, but he wants us to come home. So therefore we have to take part because Krishna wants it. Okay? It's not, no other reason, because he wants it. And similarly in the Kurukshetra battle, right? Krishna wants that to happen. So Arjuna didn't want to fight. Krishna said, no, I want these people all killed. No question. And sometimes we think he's so cruel. But by doing that, everyone gets liberated. But when you are in the bodily conscious, you can't see that liberation taking place. The purity of the whole action comes when you follow Krishna's instruction. Then you say, oh, and so remember when Yudhishthira is going back to Godhead, he sees all of them in the heavenly kingdom. Everybody is enjoying, back situated in their proper positions. So this is a nice and amazing statement. He personally comes to take them home. But he says, unfortunately, so we are not Bhagyavans. The living entity is so greatly attached to material enjoyment. So therefore, we need to get association that will help us give up our attachment to material life. Otherwise, we are always going after Gramya Mati, sense enjoyment. Okay? It's very important to think about this and arrange our lifestyles. 56. Pancharamam Navadwaram
Pancharamam Navadwaram
Ekapalam Trikostakam
Ekapalam Trikostakam
Sankulam Panchavipanam
Satkulam Panchavipanam
Panchaprakriti Stridhavam.
Panchaprakriti Stridhavam.
In that city, the material body, there are 5 gardens, 9 gates, 1 protector, 3 apartments, 6 families, 5 stores, 5 material elements, and 1 woman who's the lord of the house. So then he'll explain what they are. Panchendriyartha arama
Panchendriyartha arama
Dvara prana nava prabhu
Dvara prana nava prabhu
Tejo annani kostani
Tejo viyana kostani
Kulam indriya sangraha. My dear friend, the 5 gardens are the 5 objects of sense enjoyment, and the protector is the life air which passes through the 9 gates. The 3 apartments are the chief ingredients: fire, water and earth. The 6 families are the aggregate total of the mind and 5 senses. Text 58. Vipinastu Kriya Shakti
Vipinastu Kriya Shakti
Bhuta Prakriti Ravyaya
Bhuta Prakriti Ravyaya
Shakti Adisha Pumanstu Atra
Shakti Adisha Pumanstu Atra
Ravishto Nava Udyate.
Ravishto Navabudyate.
The 5 stores are the 5 working sensory organs. They transact their business through the combined forces of the 5 elements which are eternal. Behind all this activity is the soul. The soul is a person and an enjoyer in reality. However, because he is now hidden within the city of the body, he is devoid of knowledge. Means he is covered and he doesn't know who he is. Right, so text.
What is this?
What is it?
They transact their business through the combined forces of the 5 elements which are eternal.
Mm-hmm.
Earth, water, fire, everything.
They are always eternal. No? They form and they go.
Manifest one.
Is also similarly the fiery portion is divided into 3 and one is called bone. So bone is also made out of fire. The fire
Bone is fire?
it says in the middle of the paragraph.
Yeah.
Similarly, the fiery portion is divided into 3 and one is called bone.
Fiery.
Fiery.
It's towards the end of the purport. Because one is called bone. Out of the 5 elements, fire, water and food grains are very important. And what is your question?
So how is bone fiery?
Oh, the elements are there, no? Just like every portion of the body is made of a combination of elements. Okay? So just like eyesight, if you look at it, it's made up of
Water
water and all the other things. But actually the predominating element is fire. Yeah. So similarly, bone also has the predominating element of fire.
Table has fire.
Huh?
The table's wood has fire.
Wood has fire,
has fire.
like that. Yeah. Things like that. just like when you, in Ayurveda also when you eat, right, it's got Pitta, Vata, Kapha. So all those, food also has all those elements there, fire, water. So if you take like chili, it has fire in it. Then if you take yogurt, it has fire also, and it also has water or cooling element. So it's a combination of the elements that forms different types of eatables or even our own bodies. So the air is predominantly in the large intestine, Vayu. Fire is predominantly in the small intestine, like that. And then the mucus is in the flesh and the blood and all those interstitial tissues, like that. Every element has a place and they all function. When they all balance, all the three doshas are balanced, then you are healthy. Like that. So that is how the body is maintained. Okay. Just didn't want to go into all those technical things. Anyway, let's get to the text 59. Tasmin svam ramaya sprishto namamano shrutasmriti sangadi drishim prapto dasampapi yashim prabhu. My dear friend, when you enter such a body along with the woman of material desires, you become overly absorbed in sense enjoyment. Because of this, you have forgotten your spiritual life. Due to your material conceptions, you are placed in various miserable conditions. Right? So mainly if you are into material enjoyment, then you get more and more entangled. And then you forget your spiritual existence. And the same thing happened to King Puranjan. He got too much into sense enjoyment, and particularly he was fond of his wife, so he took the body of a woman. Okay. And in any case, it really doesn't matter, because Prabhupada quotes the verse from Bhagavad Gita, Shriya Vaishya Tata Shuddha. All of them now, Krishna gives them the opportunity to even go back to God if they follow the process properly. If you go to lower birth, if you don't cultivate your spiritual consciousness, that's all it is. Okay. So if you want to remain in a higher birth, then you make sure you are Krishna conscious, at least, in case. Text 60. Natum vidarbha duhita Nayam vira surittava Patistum puranjanya Buddho navamukhe yaya. Actually, you are not the daughter of Vidarbha, nor is this man Malaya Dwaja, your well-wishing husband. Nor were you the actual husband of Puranjani. You were simply captivated in this body of 9 gates. So now he's just smashing the whole idea of belonging, attachment, family, society and all. He's saying all these are false. All this family, community, society, nationality, all are false. So in the middle of that purport, Prabhupada says, actually every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the living entities are overly engrossed in the material body. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, appears and gives instructions in the form of Bhagavad Gita and Vedic literatures. Because why? He is our friend. He wants to help us. By getting these instructions, we can obtain liberation from the bodily concept of life or engagement. Just like water passes down a river, many straws and grasses are carried from the shore. These straws and grasses come together in the river's current. But when the wave stops its way and they are separated and carried somewhere else. So that means you come together as a family in this life. Next life you are going in a different way. You cannot think they are forever your eternal wives and eternal husbands, family. And some people are sentimental like that. When you are preaching, they say, "Will I be with my husband when we die?"
They say, right, the marriage relationship is for 7 lives or something.
I
They
don't
quote.
know. Who said all this?
It is said very commonly.
Yeah, it's very common.
Yeah, but where? Which scripture?
We don't know that.
Word of mouth. They do the
Gramya
सात फेरी around the fire. They say 7 जन्मों के लिए 7 रोगी. 7 फेरी 7 जन्मों के लिए 7 रोगी.
You all should find out where actually it's coming from. In any case, the only well-wisher is Krishna. Nobody else. Everybody is simply circumstantial. They are your husband, wife, children, like that. They all want something from you. And you want something from them, like that.
Mutual.
So you can see how the purports keep repeating certainly. Why? So that we cut off these attachments. We become more focused on our Krishna consciousness. That's 61. Maya hi esha maya srishta.
Maya hi esha maya srishta.
Yat pumam sam sriyam satim.
Yat pumam sam striyam satim.
Manyase no bayam yadvai.
Manyase no bhayam yadvai.
So pasya vayorgatim.
So pasya vayorgatim.
Sometimes you think yourself a man, sometimes a chaste woman, and sometimes a neutral eunuch. This is all because of the body which is created by the illusory energy. This illusory energy is my potency, and actually both of us, you and I, are pure spiritual identities. Now just try to understand this. I am trying to explain our factual position. That means they are qualitatively one, spiritual, but they are not quantitatively one. They are separate. So that must be clearly understood. Okay. So anyway, the same thing Prabhupada quotes again from previously, how we go through different bodies and how we forget our relationship with Krishna, and how to go back to Godhead is through the process of Bhakti Yoga, which is our Sanatana Dharma. Text 62. Aham bhavana chamyastvam.
Aham bhavana chamyastvam.
Tvam evaham vichakshvabo.
Tvam evaham vichakshvabo.
Nano pashyanti kavayas.
Nano pashyanti kavayas.
Chidram jatu manakati.
Chidram jatu manakati.
My dear friend, I, the Supersoul, and you, the individual soul, are not different in quality, for we are both spiritual. In fact, my dear friend, you are qualitatively not different from me in your constitutional position. Just try to consider this subject. Those who are actually advanced scholars who are in knowledge do not find any qualitative difference between you and me. So there again Krishna is saying, there's no difference. We are spirit, he is spirit. But we are minute. And we are separated individuals. Okay? Both, he says in constitutional position, you are different. Okay? So therefore, factually no difference again. But, and then Prabhupada says the Mayavadi philosophies are again and again defeated by the illusory energy. Because they don't have this knowledge and they think they know. And they think there's no separation between super soul and the individual soul, or that there is no super soul. Because they think they are the super soul. When they meditate, they see the super soul, they think they are the ones. So they are mistakenly identifying themselves as God. But as devotees, we don't do that. Just like you remember how Malaya Dwaja, when he meditated, he saw the super soul, and he saw himself also sitting next to the super soul. So in that end of that purport, Srila Prabhupada says, although one in quality with the Supreme Lord, the individual soul is under the control of Maya. Mayavadi philosophies cannot distinguish between the controller and the controlled. That is their problem. Their knowledge is Maya Parikalya. Text 63. Yatha Purusha Atmanam
Yatha Purusha Atmanam
Ekama Ekamadarshya chakshusho
Ekamadarshya chakshusho
Vidabhutam aviksheta
Vidabhutam aviksheta
Taivantaramavayo.
Tataivantaramavayo.
As a person sees the reflection of his body in a mirror to be one with himself and not different, whereas others actually see two bodies. So in our material condition, in which the living being is affected and yet not affected, there's a difference between God and the living entities. Because of matter, we cannot see the difference. That's what the whole idea is. And particularly the Prabhupada says Mayavadis, they cannot see this difference between the Supreme Lord and the living entity. And so he gives the example of how the sun is reflected in the pot of water. So the Mayavadis will say, look, the sun is in all the pots. But it's only a reflection. You know? So, but a fool will think, oh, the sun is on all the pots. Right? But actually the sun is not in the pot.
But Prabhu, this is the same example given in, I'm not remembering which canto, where it is said that the sun itself is the Bhagwan, but in the pots it represents the Paramatma. You remember that?
Yeah, it's an analogy.
Analogy, right,
Yes,
yes.
So you can say as an analogy, yes. But here is a different idea, right? They think it's all sun, a small sun. So they are saying everyone is a God. That's the difference. But if you say all are representing Paramatma, we can accept that. But you can't say we are the same as God. What they are saying is the big sun became small sun in all the pot. That means they divided. So when they combine, they become a big sun. That is their philosophy.
That holds good also, right? The Paramatma is not there in the spiritual world. Though the sun is in the upper, wherever it is in position. So it is only reflecting as Paramatma in all the individual parts. So it holds good. I don't know. I don't understand what Mata is.
So why did you say something?
No, the concept is like.
So don't say anything. But I already told her. Okay. So then in the middle paragraph, where right before the verse 3:28-40, Prabhupada says, when the super soul tells the conditioned soul, you and I are one and the same, it is to remind the conditioned soul of his spiritual identity as being qualitatively one. Got that? The sentence before that.
So is there a place where any devotee has collected all the opposition to Mayavad?
Yeah,
because all these verses have good material, but it will be good to have it in one capsule.
Yeah, I think who is that? Ravindra Swarup has done it. And, there is online, you can go and look. He has done there are many devotees who did courses in Mayapur and so on. They have a few on Mayavad and so on. So this whole
section is defeating Mayavad.
Yeah. I'll let you all read that. And then, questions you can read and answer those questions. Text 64. Evam sa manaso hangso sena pratiboditaha svastastadvya vicharena nastamapa punasmritim. This way both swans live together in the heart. When the one swan is instructed by the other, he is situated in his constitutional position. This means he regains his original Krishna consciousness, which was lost because of his material attraction.
So in the analogy of the two birds, one bird is watching, but here one swan is instructing. So there is a difference.
Well, even there also,
Just that we are
the Paramatma also watches anyway, and then he also gives instructions. So it's the same analogy, but it's slightly different.
Upadrishtanumantacha.
Yeah.
Is seer
Witness.
and then witness. Sanction.
And sanctioner also. if you are a devotee and you take up devotional service, then the Paramatma doesn't remain like Paramatma. He becomes your Ishtadev. Okay? The person you worship is in the heart. Alright. So anyway, again, Hangso Hangsena Pratibodhita. They are both compared to swans because they are white or uncontaminated. But one is superior and the other one is inferior. The inferior is attracted to material enjoyment. And so when he hears good instruction, he can then revive his original consciousness. Otherwise, he has to suffer the consequences of taking different birth. Of course, for all of us, we have to, we don't have the super soul directly talking to us because we are not qualified. So we take it through the external manifestation, spiritual manifestation. Text 65. Barhishmani tat adhyatmam parokshena pradashitam yat paroksha priyo devo Bhagavan Vishwabhavanaha. My dear King Prajna Barhi, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, is celebrated to be known indirectly. Thus I have described the story of Puranjana to you. Actually, it is an instruction for self-realization. The Prabhupada says there are many such stories in the purport, in the Puranas and so on. And then there's a glossary of some important words in this chapter. Okay. So in the previous 2-3 verses, the main point Srila Prabhupada points out is about the Mayavadis, how they concoct the actual understanding. So you can go back and read that and make notes on it. Okay? And then if you have questions, then we can discuss it. So for now, you know what are the areas, points we have to concentrate. So now you have to go back and study properly. Alright, so thus ends the Bhakti and the purports of the 4th canto, 28th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and Puranjana becomes a woman in the next slide. So tomorrow we'll do 29. 29 is